Hiya lads. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I mean, if you can't tell from what I'm wearing, I'm Norwegian. So yeah, this reviewing and ranking every Father Ted episode video was never intended to come out on St. Patrick's Day, but sure, I might as well make it a special now. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and yeah, so here's the reviewing and ranking every Father Ted episode video. Father Ted. I absolutely love this series. It's a comedy show about three priests and their housekeeper living together on a fictional island in the west of Ireland called Craggy Island. You have Father Ted Crilly, a morally dubious but ambitious man, Father Dougal Maguire, a simple-minded but well-meaning idiot, Father Jack Hackett, an angry alcoholic with a sailor's mouth, and of course, Mrs. Doyle, the hard-working housekeeper who is obsessed with making tea. This iconic quartet is the reason why the show works as well as it does. Despite the show ending a year before I was even born, watching it makes me feel nostalgic for a time I never grew up in. The show has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I have some of the merchandise that I got for Christmas over the last few years, went to the parochial house, and even had the DVD box set back in the day. If you're Irish and don't like this show, then you might as well be a leprechaun. The joke is that leprechauns don't exist, and obviously Irish people who don't like Father Ted also don't exist.
That's a nice argument, Niall. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
This series is a staple of Irish culture. It is so timeless that if I ever have grandchildren, I'm convinced they will love it. Now, despite the fact the show is set in Ireland, with a mostly Irish cast, and created by Irish people, it is technically a British show.
Physically sick, to be honest.
And that's because Hat-Trick, the production company who owns Father Ted, are British. But in my heart, this is an Irish show. There are a total of 25 episodes that ran from 1995 to 1998 on Channel 4 in the UK and RTE2 in Ireland. The thing is, I love Father Ted so much, but it's pretty difficult to explain why it is so brilliant in my usual style of videos. So I decided to do something different. I'm gonna review and rank every single episode. Here's how it will work. I will review each episode individually, and at the end of each season, I will show you how each season's episodes rank. At the end of the video, I will do one combined ranking of every episode together. Hope that is easy enough to understand. So without further ado, let's all go to Craggy Island. Since I will only cover 25 episodes, this video should be easy to make, right? Right? Good luck, Father Ted. Wow, the very first episode. Feels weird going back to it. Here's the thing, when I had the box set of the series, the disc that contained the first season went missing, so I don't have as much of a strong connection with season 1 as I do with seasons 2 and 3. With that being said, I had to wait until an episode was on TV, and even that was rare for me back then. They always aired late into the evening, and I'd be sent straight to bed because, you know, I was a child and it was a school night. It wasn't until the series started to appear on streaming platforms years ago when I finally got to rewatch some season 1 whenever I want. So season 1 feels a lot fresher in my mind in recent times. But yeah, going back to the episode, it does a great job establishing the characters and the world of Father Ted as a whole. It's about Ted being offered the chance to do an interview on a TV program. Ted really wants to be on TV, as it would give him a chance to become famous. So he goes out of his way to make sure no one ruins it for him, by sending Dougal and Jack far away from the fun fair, where the interview is taking place. I really do like this episode. Be prepared to hear that a million times. The jokes are really good, and the fun fair looks anything but fun. But that's the joke. The activities are either really lame or really dangerous. But that's Craggy Island for you. Pat Short is here as Tom, a man you wouldn't trust in a dark alley.
Fed up! Yes, Tom. I've killed a man.
He appears in the series every now and then, and gets up to some very questionable things. Speaking of reoccurring characters, John and Mary are here. They are a couple who act all lovey-dovey in front of everyone, but when no one is looking, they want to kill each other. So yeah, good episode, and since this is the first episode, it automatically goes top of the list, but I doubt it will be top for long.
God, it's lovely out.
Entertaining Father Stone. This is probably the first real classic Father Ted episode. This one's about Ted inviting a priest named Father Stone to the house, a man with about as much charisma as a bowl of porridge. He sits around the house doing absolutely nothing and barely says anything. In fact, he only speaks when spoken to.
Would you like me to turn on the television?
No thanks, I'm fine.
I like how almost everyone doesn't like how boring Father Stone is, even showing their displeasure in his face, and he doesn't seem to care. He's almost like the exact opposite of how the show itself is, which can be loud and outgoing, while he is more shy and reserved. He's also a secretly good artist. He drew a painting of himself and Ted together, which you will see hung above the fireplace for the rest of the series. A nice bit of continuity if you ask me. This is definitely going ahead of Good Luck Father Ted.
If I had that cup and I was Elvis and I was in a big car, that'd be fantastic.
The Passion of St. Tibulus. This episode introduces Bishop Brennan, played brilliantly by Jim Norton. He is my favourite reoccurring character in the series. He has this otherworldly presence about him. He feels like he's playing the pantomime villain the way he acts.
Nothing is your area, Crilly. You do not have an area, unless it's a kind of a play area with sandcastles and buckets and spades. Now do what you're told, right?
He runs the diocese that Ted, Dougal and Jack work in, and they're terrified of him. Even Batman would be afraid of him.
No!
Anyway, he arrives at the house to bring news of a blasphemous film being shown on the island called The Passion of St. Tibulus. Despite being banned in Ireland, the film ended up on Craggy Island because of some loophole. He wants Ted and Dougal to go to the local cinema and protest against the film. However, in doing so, they helped make the film the most popular ever shown on the island, surprisingly to the delight of the bishop. This episode's great. It has probably the best lines in the entire series.
The amount of people's lives irreparably damaged.
There were only nuns.
Nuns are people too.
And do you remember that bit when St. Tibulus, he tried to take that banana off the other lad?
That wasn't a banana, Dougal.
Down with this sort of thing.
Careful now.
I'm putting this one ahead of Good Luck Father Ted, but behind Entertaining Father Stone.
We have the bishop over, you know, Len Brennan. Oh, that gobshite.
Competition time. The annual All Priests Stars in Their Eyes lookalike competition is around the corner. Ted wants to dress up as Elvis Presley, but it turns out Dougal and Jack also want to dress up as Elvis. This annoys Ted, as he desperately wants to beat his rival, Father Dick Byrne. He, along with Father Cyril Macduff and Father Jim Johnson of Rugged Island, are like evil versions of the priests on Craggy Island. They are another set of reoccurring characters in the series that appear every now and then.
Whoa! Is that blackface, dude?
I love this episode. There are just so many memorable moments and characters throughout. Whether it is the unhinged nature of Henry Sellers whenever he's drunk,
Bloody sanctimonious scumbags! Absolutely. Made my life a bloody misery!
or the constant never-ending laughter from Father Barty Dunn. It's just great.
Oh, Lord!
How long was the car journey?
4 hours.
I like the sergeant character, and this line he says cracks me up every time.
God, this reminds me of Vietnam.
Are you in Vietnam?
Oh, no. I mean, you know, the films.
This one is going top of the list, ahead of Entertaining Father Stone.
There's only one Mother Teresa, and that's you, Ted.
And God Created Women. I think this episode is just okay. Not bad or anything, just not one I'm ever eager to watch again. In fact, when I watched this episode for this video, it was the first time I've seen it in years. To me, there is no bad episode in this series, and I think it's a testament to how fantastic the show is that even an average episode like this one would be a great episode in an average show. Anyway, this one is about Ted meeting a novelist named Polly Clark at a book signing. They keep bumping into each other during Ted's journey home. He finds out that she is renting a cottage on the island. Throughout the episode, he slowly falls for her, to the point where Ted half-asses his work life just to be with her. I don't know if it's because I haven't seen this episode many times, but there wasn't really that many moments that stick out to me. Like I said before, not a bad episode by any means, but this is still going bottom of the list, behind Good Luck Father Ted.
I stick this effing pitchfork up your hole. Oh, that was another one. Oh, yes.
I see what you mean, Mrs. Doyle.
Bastard this and bastard that. You can't move for the bastards in her novels. It's wall-to-wall bastards.
Grant unto him eternal rest. The conclusion to Season 1. We have now returned to form with this episode. Ted and Dougal go into Jack's room, and they both find him dead after drinking a bottle of floor polish. After a while, they meet a solicitor named Laura Sweeney, and through her they find out that Jack had £500,000 in his will. This money will be given to Ted and Dougal on the condition that they will spend one more night with him, due to Jack's fear of being buried alive. This episode is great, with some really funny bits. I like the overdramatic grieving priest at Jack's wake.
He could have been Pope, Ted, but the fucking Jesuits, they have it all tied up.
And Sister Monica talking to a black priest, saying how great the church is in Africa, only to be told that he doesn't care, because he's from Donegal.
Sure, I wouldn't know. I'm from Donegal.
Also, Dougal trying to speak Latin and failing miserably is great.
Totus tuus minimus canis costa carta Banjo Roberto.
Very good episode all around, going ahead of entertaining Father Stone, but behind competition time.
Ted says you were touching him.
The first season of the show is great, but you could definitely tell looking back that the cast were still finding their feet with their roles. They were a bit more reserved compared to what they would go on to be, but even with all that considered, the acting is still brilliant and full of life. The show can only get better from here, I promise. Hell. A really strong start to Season 2. I'm just gonna say it right now. This is the best episode in the entire series, which may raise a few eyebrows for some of you who have seen the show before. Because on paper, this episode has no right being as good as it is based on the premise. It's July the 19th, and Ted is struggling to figure out what they usually do on such a day. It turns out that they have to go on holidays. Ted, Dougal and Jack go to a caravan park and spend time in a caravan that belongs to a friend of Ted's, in which they intend to stay in. But it turns out that the caravan belonged to someone else, and that guy calls the police on them. The real caravan they were supposed to go to is really small. When it comes to the local landmarks, there are only two: the Magic Road and St. Kevin's Stump. They have nothing to entertain themselves with, so they end up getting bored very quickly. This episode introduces us to Father Noel Furlong, played by Graham Norton. You know, the guy that has his own talk show. Yeah, him. He perfectly sums up the insanity of the series.
A friend of mine, Father Sweeney, he had a very small bladder, about the size of a Terry's chocolate orange.
No! I'm fine. Okay? I'm fine.
You're like a bunch of camels?
He's another reoccurring character in the show. His hyperactive nature gets under the skin of everyone he meets. I love this episode. I could even recite the entire script of this episode word for word. It's that good. My favourite part is when Jack is left by the cliffs, only for it to be the Magic Road. He falls off the cliff and ends up on a boat full of women and drink. A dream for Jack. Another reoccurring character that gets added in this episode is Father Larry Duff. a priest who keeps getting hurt every time someone calls him on his phone. You have to feel sorry for him. This episode is going top of the list for the rest of the video.
These are small, but the ones out there are far away. Small, far away. Forget it.
Think fast, Father Ted. The roof of the house is leaking, and Ted can't afford to fix it himself. The only way that they can raise enough money is by organising a raffle, which Craggy Island hasn't done in over 30 years. The Bishop agrees to give them a car as a prize. We don't get to see Bishop Brennan in the flesh, however. Such a shame. Upon noticing a dent on the car, Ted uses a hammer to fix it, but he only makes it worse. And I mean, a lot worse. When Ted realises what he did, Ted suggests to get Father Finnegan's car. Father Finnegan likes to dance all the time, and he just so happens to have the exact same car the Bishop gave them. They agree to take the car, rig the raffle so they can win, and then give it back. Great episode once again. This episode has so many one-off characters like the DJ, Father Billy O'Dwyer, a priest who keeps giving away money to the point where he can't pay people back.
I'll have the money for you next week. Please, please, one more chance, that's all I ask. Please, please. Oh, thanks very much, Mrs. Doyle.
There is also Father Purcell, the most boring priest in the world. I'm just saying, you wouldn't want to be stuck in a lift with this guy. He's basically the opposite of Father Stone. Instead of being quiet all the time, he never shuts up.
I was in the AA there, for a while, and the insurance was very expensive. I had to crash the car just to get the money back,
Despite how iconic this episode is, it's still going behind hell. Tentacles of Doom. 3 bishops visit the island as they are going to bless the Holy Stone of Clonrickard, which will be upgraded to a Class 2 relic. Ah yes, the Holy Stone. This isn't the first time it was brought up in the show. It was actually first mentioned in Season 1.
And why is it called the Holy Stone of Clonrickard? I thought Clonrickard was in Fermanagh.
It is. The Holy Stone was up there, but it wasn't doing great business.
The 3 bishops are Bishop Fax, someone who speaks clearly and with full authority.
We elevated a mushroom field in Cavan to Class 3.
Bishop Jordan, an older philosophical man prone to shocks.
Oh!
And Bishop O'Neill, just a normal guy.
Aliens? Now there's something that might just be possible.
Ted even makes Jack take elocution lessons before they arrive, but can only say 2 lines. After Jack uses those 2 lines on the bishops, Bishop Fax is most impressed with Jack's attitude, much to Ted's shock. Another good episode. I love the part where Dougal out of nowhere unintentionally frightens Bishop Jordan.
Ah! Dougal, what are you doing?
Sorry, Ted. I just remembered Aliens is on after the news.
With all that said, however, this episode is one of the weakest in Season 2. If this was in Season 1, it'd probably be one of the better episodes. This one is going bottom of the list, behind Think Fast Father Ted. Old Grey Whistle Theft. Ted and Dougal were about to go on a picnic together, but Dougal remembers he has a friend to meet, Father Damien Lennon. Damien, or Damo as he calls himself, is so cool and hip, if you can't tell by how he acts and appears. Dougal idolizes him and is easily influenced by him, especially when it comes to making important decisions in life, like which band is better.
Oasis or Blur? Blur. What?
Oasis, I mean Oasis.
It was the late 90s, okay? Joe Rooney does a great job portraying him as an entitled brat.
Yeah, tell him that's fine. I don't care what he does. It's not the boss of me.
Going back to the episode, Ted goes on the picnic with Jack instead. A rude couple comes by and tells him to
Fuck off!
Ted stands his ground, and this forces the angry man to call Benson the groundskeeper, who keeps abusing his whistle. Ted leaves, and later that night, an unknown figure steals the whistle, and it becomes an island-wide scandal. Be prepared for what I'm about to say here. Another great episode. Again, more brilliant moments throughout. I love how bored the sergeant is by how little crime is happening on the island. The fact that he has to use a helicopter to find the whistle is just so overdramatic, it's amazing. A reminder that this is over a stolen whistle. The story Benson tells about the whistle had me in stitches.
It saved my grandfather's life. He was being executed by the British. They had him up against a wall and they shot him. And the bullets all hit the whistle in his coat pocket and bounced off him.
God almighty, so he survived.
No, they just reloaded, shot him again.
So yeah, this episode is going ahead of Think Fast Father Ted, but behind hell.
Anyway, there you go. Yeah, bye. Bye.
A Song for Europe. Here's some context for this episode. During the 80s and 90s, Ireland was successful in Eurovision. For those who don't know, it's an annual competition where a singer or band from each European country competes to win by singing original songs. Each country gets a vote, with the only criteria being that you can't vote for your own country. The winning country gets to host next year's contest. I'm bringing this up because it's a big deal in Ireland, so it's no surprise that they decided to make an episode on such a topic. Dougal suggests to Ted that they should compete in the Eurosong competition. Ted shrugs it off, until he finds out that Father Dick Byrne is competing, and Ted is suddenly on board.
Dougal, get the guitar.
I said get the guitar!
They come up with a song called My Lovely Horse. The lyrics are god tier, but the tune is terrible.
My lovely horse running through the field. Where are you going with your fetlocks blowing in that wind?
After listening to an obscure Norwegian song from the 70s, Ted gets the idea to steal the music for My Lovely Horse, assuming that no one has heard the song before. We then see the best music video of all time play out in their dreams, and it's so good I have the song saved on my Spotify account. Before they can get to the Eurosong competition, they have to win a song for Ireland. This is a great episode. God, I sound like a broken record saying that, but it's true. I really love the awkwardness and sheer second-hand embarrassment shown by everyone involved when the bad version of My Lovely Horse is playing. The silence from the audience after the song plays cracks me up. The fact Jack hates the song so much that he grabs a shotgun and shoots the guitar Ted was using is just typical Father Jack. The whole Jekyll and Hyde-ness of the host Fred Rickwood is just so funny. When he's on stage he looks like $1 million, but off stage he's a mess. Dick Byrne's song is first to be played and it's called The Miracle Is Mine. It's good, but it's not as good as My Lovely Horse. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Great episode. Enough said. It's going ahead of Old Grey Whistle Theft, but behind hell.
My lovely horse, I want to hold you so tight. I want to rub my fingers through your tail and love you all night.
The Plague. Wait, Father Ben? Am I watching the right show?
What is going on here?
Is this a knockoff version I accidentally stumbled upon? No, it's actually a show in the Father Ted universe. It doesn't have any relevance to the episode, I just think it's a nice little bit of self-referential humour. Dougal gets a pet rabbit, but after Bishop Brennan rings to say he'll be at the house, Ted tells Dougal to get rid of it. This is because the bishop once got stuck in a lift. Rabbits got into the lift somehow, and they started nibbling at his cape. The reason for his visit is because Jack has been wandering around the island at night naked, and it must be stopped.
Good grief, he's naked!
The next morning, a herd of rabbits end up in the house. With Ted terrified, he has to find a way of getting rid of them. Since the pet shop will be closed for a long time, there aren't many alternatives. Great episode. Again, I like how it was never really explained how a herd of rabbits ended up in the house. I mean, you just have to accept it. And I want to know what kind of drugs Ted was on to make him think that a rabbit would chase a dog, because it must have been really fun.
Call me old-fashioned, but I prefer the more conventional greyhounds pursuing rabbits approach. Well, it was just a thought.
This episode is going ahead of Old Grey Whistle Theft, but behind A Song for Europe.
Don't worry, fella, they won't feel it, ye. No. Come on, fella, you can have a go yourself if you want.
No, Tom, honestly, it's a bit cruel.
I could run him down in me van.
Rockahula Ted. I'm just gonna say it now. I don't like this episode. I don't know if this is a controversial opinion, but that's just the way I feel. I always skip this one whenever I get the chance to watch Father Ted. So yeah, Ted is about to judge the annual Lovely Girls competition, a parody of the Rose of Tralee. It's basically Ted saying,
"You're breathtaking! You're all breathtaking!"
to these women the whole time. Meanwhile, a parody of Sinead O'Connor by the name of Niamh Connolly, a rebellious singer who came out in an interview criticising the church, much to the disgust of Ted.
The church in Ireland secretly had lots of potatoes during the famine, and they hid the potatoes in the pillows and sold them abroad at potato fairs.
There are still many things I like about this episode. I like how Father Jack gets mistaken for Bob Geldof, and yet people keep giving him money, thinking it was going towards Live Aid. The activities the women have to do are so mundane that it's hilarious. The ending where Mrs. Doyle goes out with the girls and the lads have to look after themselves had me on the floor. But yeah, aside from that, I never really found this episode all that funny in general. This is going bottom of the list, behind Tentacles of Doom.
We can do what we like. Is that meat? Do I still have to pay for this?
Cigarettes and alcohol and rollerblading. Now this is more like it. After watching the last episode, it's nice to see everything back on track here. Lent is coming up, a time of year when you have to give up on something you enjoy for 40 days. Ted, Dougal and Jack agreed to give up on cigarettes, rollerblading and alcohol respectively, after hearing Father Dick Byrne and his gang are doing the same. They realise how difficult it is, and they decide to hire a nun to keep them in check throughout Lent. Turns out the nun they got was Sister Assumpta. Yeah, remember her? She was in the episode And God Created Women. Ted and Dougal thought they would get it easy, however it was anything but that.
Matty Hislop's 10-step programme to ridding yourself of your pride, the single greatest obstacle to inner fulfilment.
She makes them go through so much pain and suffering as punishment for giving in to temptation. Fantastic episode. My favourite part is when she gives a Chinese burn to Dougal and he's just smiling like an idiot, completely ignorant of the pain that he's going through. And it annoys Sister Assumpta so much. This one is going ahead of The Plague, but behind A Song for Europe.
None! No, it's none.
None!
Bye, Father. He's just gone for his walk.
New Jack City. Father Jack is starting to grow a lot of hair on his hands, something which results in him going to an old priest's home against his will. But not long after, a new priest by the name of Father Fenton Stack comes along to take Jack's place. He seems alright at first, but within a matter of minutes, they realise that he is one huge bastard. He takes other people's things, plays loud jungle music throughout the night, and drills holes in the walls. Ted has had enough of his antics and decides to take back Jack from the home. This episode is good. I quote this episode a lot. It's that good.
Don't flip! You
You flipping flipper!
But I do think Father Stack is a bit of a mixed bag. Within the context of the story, he's actually perfect. It's supposed to show the contrast between him and Jack. However, Stack as a character leaves a lot to be desired. Played by comedian Brendan Grace, his line delivery is as dry as sand, which drives me up the wall like Ted. I know that's probably the point, but still, he does say some funny lines every now and again, I'll give him that.
I want to listen to some music.
Oh, go ahead there.
I wasn't asking for permission.
I think that you're a very rude man.
If you ever say that to me again, I'll put your head through the wall.
This episode is going ahead of Tentacles of Doom, but behind Think Fast Father Ted. Flight into Terror. This just might be the only episode in the series not set mostly on Craggy Island. Ted, Dougal and Jack go on a plane after they went on a pilgrimage, but after Dougal accidentally pushes a button that empties one of the fuel tanks, this puts everyone on board in danger, as there isn't enough fuel to do an emergency landing. This plays into Ted's biggest fear, as established in the beginning of the episode. Combined with Dougal annoying him over a dog chew toy shaped like a phone, this has him on edge for the entire flight. There are only 2 parachutes on the entire plane, for some reason, so Ted comes up with the idea to hold a little writing contest to see who wins them. Father Noel is back. If I saw Father Noel on the same plane as me, I'd jump out the plane without hesitation. The interactions and misunderstandings between Ted and the blind priest is really funny.
I suppose you can smell things from 10 miles away and you hear things before they happen. No.
This episode is non-parallel. It's great. It's great. Going ahead of Tentacles of Doom, but behind New Jack City.
Could you not breathe like that? You're making a noise. Now really, Father, honestly, this is a no smoking flight.
A Christmassy Ted. Here it is, the one and only Christmas special. I don't think it would surprise any of you to know that I only ever watch this at Christmas time. And every Christmas. I just love Christmas specials based on any TV show, and this is no exception. This is an almost hour-long episode, and despite it being by far the longest episode in the entire series, you wouldn't even notice because of how great the pacing is. Basically, Ted and Dougal go out shopping to get a present for Mrs. Doyle, until suddenly they find themselves in Ireland's biggest lingerie section, along with a few more priests.
It's Ireland's biggest lingerie section, I understand.
Really?
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
If they were seen looking at women's clothes, then it could be a huge scandal for the church. Ted and the gang managed to escape without getting spotted. He was rewarded for this by being given a Golden Cleric Award, an award given to priests for doing something great, and Ted always dreamed of receiving that same award one day. There would be a huge award ceremony outside his house, and the speech he gives goes on for what seems like an eternity. Before that, an unknown entity appears before Ted. It's a priest by the name of Father Todd Unctious, and he is a funny, wacky dude. However, something about him just feels a bit off. I can't put my finger on it, but he kinda looks like a man who would steal Golden Cleric Awards. Despite how unique this episode is based on its length, it's still just as funny as the rest of them. However, it just falls short in getting top spot. That's largely due to the fact that the way some of the plot lines just end without much of a payoff, like Ted being unhappy but unable to understand why. It's only a minor problem in what is an absolute classic of a series. This special is going ahead of The Plague, but behind cigarettes, alcohol and rollerblading.
We had a phone call. I think you were supposed to do a funeral today.
The funeral? I completely forgot about it.
It's all right. Father Maguire said he'd do it.
It's okay, Soda.
Dougal's doing a funeral! You let Dougal do a funeral!
Sorry about that.
Season 2 has the most episodes out of all the seasons, with 11 in total. Even if you don't count the Christmas special as a regular episode, there'd still be way more episodes anyway. As regards to the overall quality of the season, to me, this season is peak Father Ted. It's a case of both quantity and quality compared to season 1. I know that's usually the case with most shows, but still, even with just one miss, it still doesn't affect my overall opinion of the season as a whole. Season 3 will surely be a blast. Are you right there, Father Ted? By this point in the series, Declan Lowney, the man who directed every episode in seasons 1 and 2, had left, being replaced by Andy de Emeny? I hope that's how you pronounce it. Not that it matters, really. Anyway, this episode is about Ted accidentally doing something racist. He does an impression of a Chinaman, only to discover that some Chinese people were watching him the whole time.
I hear you're a racist now, Father.
So in an act of desperation, he goes out of his way to make amends with the people he insulted. First by apologising to the family from earlier on, only for that to backfire due to bad luck. He then shows a slide presentation in front of a group of Chinese people. This is a very good episode. See what I did there? It's like what they did with the socks, the pre-socks. And what makes this episode in particular funny isn't the fact that Ted was being racist, but it was the reactions from the Chinese people, rightfully pissed off at him for doing such an act. By the way, this episode actually introduced me to the concept of racism. The other plots going on are also pretty good. Mrs. Doyle having back problems because of her falling off the roof while cleaning meant that the house is a mess, which leads to Dougal finding the lampshade, which leads to Ted using it for a really distasteful joke. There's also his friend, Father Seamus Fitzpatrick, who collects World War II memorabilia. Okay, let me be more specific. Nazi memorabilia. You should find better friends, Ted. Going top of the list for now.
Most of these accounts seem in order, Father Smith. But I wonder, could I ask Father Crelly about one or two of these things that he's put down under expenses?
Ted!
Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep. It's the annual King of the Sheep competition. Ted had just bet the entire house's heating allowance on Chris the sheep, the favourite of the competition, to win. But then Chris hears rumours of a sheep-eating monster from Giant Reed and Hood Hastings. As a result, his confidence is shot.
Oh my God.
I mean, when you compare it with what he looked like last year.
It's like two completely different sheep.
Fargo Boyle, Chris's owner, asks Ted and Dougal to help his prize sheep get his confidence back. I love this episode. I feel like I'm about to go insane here from how many times I've said that line. What I like about this episode is that it shows just how prideful Ted is, to the point where it completely clouds his better judgment. I won't spoil what happens here, so go watch it. Dougal's obsession with playing sounds from the BBC sound effects record, combined with Mrs. Doyle's theories on what the monster looks like, leads to some real comedy gold.
They think it might be a kind of giant fox!
Dougal!
Sorry.
As good as this episode is, I'm gonna place it behind Are You Right There, Father Ted?
Don't worry, Fargo. By the next time you see him, he'll be a new sheep. If not, we'll make him into a jumper and a few chops.
I'm terribly sorry. That was just tasteless. I am terribly, terribly sorry.
Speed 3. Pat Mustard is the new milkman on Craigie Island, and he is quite the womanizer, even hitting on Mrs. Doyle. When Ted and Dougal notice how hairy the babies are in the pictures from the Baby of the Year competition, they come to the realization that they are the offspring of Pat Mustard. They even go as far as to spy on him while he is on duty and take pictures of him doing the hokey pokey with many women.
And now to ride Mrs. O'Reilly.
After showing said pictures to Pat's boss, he fires him. Dougal decides to take it upon himself to replace Pat as the new milkman. As he drives around on the milk float, Pat rings Ted to let him know that there is a bomb on it, and that if it goes under 4 miles an hour, it will explode. If you can't tell from the last sentence, it is basically a parody of the Speed movies, but instead of a young Keanu Reeves, it's a young priest. This episode's good. It might just be the most epic one we've had so far. Without giving much of the second half of the episode away, I like how Ted's friends, Father Derek and Father Clark, believe that the best way to save Dougal is by saying mass. And after a montage that features the three of them planning their next move, their conclusion is having another mass, which annoys Ted so much. Mrs. Doyle having so much milk in the house, to the point where she's using it to water the plants, is just so funny, and all because she wants to see Pat more and impress him. This episode is going ahead of Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep, but behind Are You Right There, Father Ted?
Pat was wondering if he could put his massive tool in my box.
What? How dare you? Yeah, it's too big for the milk float. I'll pick it up tomorrow.
The mainland. Ted, Dougal, Jack and Mrs. Doyle all go to the mainland for a variety of reasons. Ted collects his money after winning a bet. Dougal wants to go to the caves. Mrs. Doyle is meeting with a friend of hers called Mrs. Deneen for tea, because of course, and Jack needs a new pair of glasses. Ted and Dougal go to the caves, and it's there where we see Richard Wilson from One Foot in the Grave, a show that Dougal was watching at the beginning of the episode. I like how Richard Wilson is such a celebrity around these parts, to the point where they can say his catchphrase from the show.
I don't believe it!
Ted gets his head smashed in by him and walks away in embarrassment, because Richard Wilson hates hearing that catchphrase. Even the tour guide really wanted to say it, since he is such a fanboy, but he has to remain professional because it's his job.
I don't believe it! I don't believe it!
A crow steals Jack's new glasses and uses them to make a nest full of glasses. This makes Jack think he is going inside a place where he could drink because of his selective eyesight, only for him to end up in an AA meeting. After escaping and finding himself in a pub, one of the attendees at the meeting tries to stop him, only for the guy to get hit off screen and Jack getting arrested. I wonder how Mrs. Doyle and Mrs. Deneen are getting on. Yeah, they end up fighting each other in the cafe because they both wanted to pay for everything, which leads to their arrest. Back at the cave, Ted and Dougal get lost and bump into a ghost. No, it's worse. It's Father Noel. I love how Ted and Dougal become more horrified when they see Noel. Like, it just cracks me up every time. Great episode. Great episode, great episode. I've said it so many times now. This episode is going ahead of Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep, but behind Speed 3. Escape from Victory. This is interesting. The first and only two-parter of the entire series. The all-priest 5-a-side over 75s indoor challenge football match between Craggy Island and Rugged Island is coming up. Oh, I can't believe I managed to get all that in. So you know what that means? That's right. Father Dickburn is back. Ted is in a distressed state as he thinks the house is bugged, so that Dick can hear any potential tactics Ted has come up with for the match. They are both managing their respective teams and the stakes are high, since they agreed to do a forfeit system in which the loser has to do something embarrassing. It is clear that Rugged Island are the favourites to win.
There he is, Ted. Father Romeo Sensini. 17 caps with the Vatican over 75s. Looks after himself. Drinks only very, very fine wine. Can climb 2 flights of stairs unassisted. Needs only 1 nun to help him get out of a chair. You haven't a chance.
With one of his best players now dead and Jack in a deep sleep after drinking a whole bottle of sleeping medicine, it only makes the job harder. What this episode is really good at is showing some items and then using said items, like the remote control wheelchair.
I mean, look, a remote control wheelchair. Why would you need that?
Which Ted uses to control Jack, and fake hands.
You probably get more use from those fake joke arms you got.
In the end, after a hard-fought match, Craggy Island won, thanks to a goal from
Father Cullen!
But then the referee notices the fake hands and gives Rugged Island the win instead. Dick says that Ted's punishment should be... I can't say it. I just can't. It's scary. Great episode. And it's going ahead of Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep, but behind the mainland.
Go on, my son.
Kicking Bishop Brennan up the arse. The second part, and yeah, it's really good. So after Ted gets caught cheating in the last episode, Dick decides that the best punishment for Ted is to, well, read the title of the episode. Throughout the episode, both Ted and Dougal try everything to make sure that they don't have to do the punishment. We saw earlier in the series how stressed Ted was over destroying a car belonging to Bishop Brennan, and how he knew for a fact that he'd be killed for it.
If Bishop Brennan finds out that we wrecked the car, he will kill us.
So imagine what the Bishop would do to Ted if he physically assaulted him. He would most likely go full Dr. Manhattan on Ted. Bishop Brennan is not alone, for he has brought Father Jessup, the most sarcastic priest in the country, and that would end up being his downfall.
Hello, Father Jessup. Helping Bishop Brennan then?
No, I'm up in space, doing important work for NASA.
The dynamic between Mrs. Doyle and Father Jessup is great, because since she doesn't understand sarcasm, she is told by Ted to basically do the opposite of what Jessup says. Jack would lock him up in his underpants hamper, because he was annoying him. It is so bad that it's a worse form of punishment than being inside a brazen bull. When Jessup begs for help from Mrs. Doyle, she lets him stay inside the hamper because of the advice Ted gave earlier about doing the opposite of what he says. What can I say except it's funny, iconic, yeah. And this episode is going ahead of Speed 3, but behind Are You Right There, Father Ted?
I'm going to do it, Dougal. I'm ready, as God is my witness. I will kick Bishop Brennan up the arse.
Ready! Keep the noise down in there.
Night of the Nearly Dead. The penultimate episode of the series. We're almost at the finish line. This is a really, really, really damn good episode. If you don't know who Daniel O'Donnell is, then let me explain. He is an Irish musician who has a real soothing voice, and he is very friendly. His music is so safe and inoffensive. He's the kind of person your 60-year-old aunt would listen to and idolise. Why am I bringing him up? Well, he was the inspiration for Owen McLove, a young man who is adored by older women, including Mrs. Doyle. Owen has a segment on his show where he reads a poem sent in by the general public, and as a prize, goes to the house of the person whose poem he just read. Mrs. Doyle wins and Owen comes by to visit. However, we find out that Owen isn't exactly who we thought he is. He is an entitled, rude, spoiled brat.
I'm hungry. Where's the jam?
You're not supposed to eat before your dinner.
You shut up. I'm Moon McLove. I can do what I like.
Not only do they have to deal with him, but also a horde of old women who are desperate to see him. This came about because Mrs. Doyle unintentionally spills the beans over when Owen is coming to the house. The older women in this episode act like zombies, but instead of eating brains, they just want to be with Owen, and it's just like really funny.
Go away. I don't want to catch the menopause.
I don't know how else to describe it, okay? The name of the episode is the not so subtle parody of Night of the Living Dead, and for that alone, the best one in the entire season. This episode is going ahead of Are You Right There, Father Ted?
I'm sorry he's been so much trouble, Father. I think a lot of it has to do with this problem.
Oh, yes, you mentioned something about that earlier. What is his problem?
I have no willy.
Going to America. The final episode. What a way to end the series. Ted gets offered the chance to move to a new parish in America. However, this would mean leaving behind Dougal, Jack and Mrs. Doyle. Afraid of upsetting them, he lies to them by saying that they will be moving with him. The alternate ending is actually really dark. It was going to end with Ted committing suicide after his move to America fell through, realising he's never going to leave the life he has. The creators of the show, Graham Linehan and Arthur Matthews, were hesitant to include it in the final edit of the episode, but following the death of Ted's actor, Dermot Morgan, they knew for sure that they were going to remove it entirely, since it would be in poor taste. They instead replaced it with the montage, which is a better way to end the series in my opinion. I always find it difficult going back to this episode, because of how teary-eyed I feel every time I boot this one on, knowing that there wouldn't be any more episodes coming out. 9 out of 10 times I skipped this one, and because of that, this episode is last in the Season 3 ranking, behind Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep. Maybe a bit controversial, but sure, whatever.
That silver-haired priest, what's his name?
Why, that's Father Ted Crilly.
Crilly, huh? Thank you.
And who are you?
Sorry, I went over there. What'd you say?
To me, Season 3 is only marginally worse than Season 2. Watching this season in particular was really bittersweet, because on one hand, it's great seeing the show end on a high note, even if I don't particularly like revisiting the last episode. But on the other hand, it's sad that we will never see these characters together again. I can't believe this is over. I'm done reviewing all the episodes. Now here's the final ranking, which goes from worst to best. Rockahula Ted and God Created Women, Going to America, Good Luck Father Ted, Chirpy Burpy Cheap Sheep, Tentacles of Doom, Flight into Terror, New Jack City, The Passion of St. Tibulus, Escape from Victory, The Mainland, Speed 3, Think Fast Father Ted, Entertaining Father Stone, Old Grey Whistle Theft, Kicking Bishop Brennan Up the Arse, The Plague, A Christmassy Ted, Cigarettes and Alcohol and Rollerblading, Grant unto him eternal rest, Are You Right There, Father Ted, Competition Time, Night of the Nearly Dead, A Song for Europe, and finally, a top spot, Hell. So what has really happened to Father Ted ever since, the show ended? There were multiple attempts to remake the show, as far back as 2015. At that time, it was going to be set in Boston, but Linehan said the idea was ridiculous. A musical was in the works, and it was going to be written by both Linehan and Matthews. The script and songs were actually close to completion in 2018. The idea was to have Ted become the Pope, because reasons, and this was going to act as the real final episode of the series. However, it was in production hell, because in 2020, there was some activism going on within Hat-Trick before it ended up getting cancelled entirely in 2022. This was because some of the controversy surrounding Linehan's views on transgender rights. Yeah, just watch the show instead, please. If I could turn at least a few of you watching this video into Father Ted fans, like myself, then I think I've done my job. Go watch the Father Ted documentary, Small Far Away. It gives us some insight into how the show first came about and how it was made, as well as some like behind the scenes stuff and bloopers. Alright, that's the end of the video now. Thank you very much. Bye.
Night, Dougal. Night, Ted.
Oh, my throat is so sore.